Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom: The Dark Ages. Available May 15th on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. Pre-order now.
Rated M for mature.
News Hour, sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam.
On 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5 o'clock. Good morning. It is Monday, March 10th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine today. Beautiful. High 61. Tonight and overnight, clear, low 42, and then much of the same tomorrow, even warmer. Tuesday, sunshine, high 64. If you're walking out the door with us right now, it is 50 and clear in Pomona up in Rockland County, 37 and clear in Butler over in New Jersey, and it's 44 and clear right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
New Jersey may start its own congestion pricing toll for drivers coming into the Garden State who left a dead child at a Brooklyn hospital and then ran away. Some firefighters on Long Island believe arsonists may have started the Hampton fires. A Columbia campus protester is picked up by ICE, and a celebration of life for Biggie Smalls in Brooklyn. All right, let's get into it at 5:01. A dead toddler dropped off at a Brooklyn hospital yesterday. Police say shortly before noon yesterday, an unidentified person left a 3-year-old boy who was unconscious and unresponsive at University Hospital downstate in Prospect Lefferts Garden.
I heard that some lady bringing a baby lifeless. And when they tried to get to her, asked her what happened, and she just left. She just took off. She had a car parked there waiting for her, and they just left. Leave the baby there.
Doctors pronounced the child dead. They say he had physical trauma to his body.
The nurse was screaming.
What was the nurse saying?
No pulse. They couldn't find no pulse, and they started to CPR. But the baby, I think they said the baby probably died before. A while before she bring it in. So I don't know. That was it.
And some of the neighbors who live near the hospital, police knocking on their doors saying, hey, can we look at your doorbell cameras to see if we pick up anybody who might be running or driving with this child?
It's a baby. I don't even know.
A 3-year-old boy.
It was a 3-year-old boy. Oh my God. No, it's sad.
A couple different scenarios we're being told about. That's either a mom and dad or a couple that brought this child to the hospital, or it's one person alone.
I have a 4-year-old grandson, 3-year-old, 2-year-old. I cannot imagine who would do that to a child.
Now, we checked in with the NYPD, has not released any names or additional information about the parents of the child or any potential suspects. This was as of early this morning.
The police came twice, but they don't find nothing in my camera. As a mother does have 3 daughters and 7 gun kids, and that's very, very awful for somebody to do.
Yeah, so, of course, people in this neighborhood shocked by what looks to be a crime. Of course, as more details come into who may have left this child, this 3-year-old, dead at the hospital, we'll pass them on to you. Out on Long Island, boy, it was a tough weekend for them with fire whipping through the Hamptons. Fire officials say the West Hampton fire, that's 100% knocked down. So are the other fires, and there is a thought that it may be arsonists who were behind this. But, of course, they weren't thinking about that as they were just trying to put out these fires over the weekend.
The DEC forest rangers are actually in the woods. They have heavy machinery and firefighters working on foot to extinguish remaining hotspots.
And boy, they did a good job doing that. Governor Hochul declaring a state of emergency after these brush fires burned through a well-known part of Long Island over the weekend. The 4 wind-driven fires erupted on the edge of the Hamptons, devouring 600 acres, destroying 2 commercial buildings before they were declared under control.
There were winds 35 miles an hour and above. There was also a lot of downed trees that fed this fire. And that's when you saw the huge clouds of smoke that engulfed this entire area.
Now, they're not sure that it's arson, but they're sniffing around. They say arson could be the cause of the fires.
We're always going to investigate it as a possible arson until we can rule that out. We're trying to find the origin of the fire to determine whether or not it was started by natural means or something else.
Yeah, so the fires, again, they burned through about 600 acres. Now, typically, New York sees wildfires this time of year, starting this time of year, and so it could just be that. Over 24 detectives that were investigating how the fire started over the weekend. You could see them in and out of the woods where these fires took place. They'll try again this week to end a wildcat strike by some New York State prison guards.
Striking guards are set to return to work Monday, 4 weeks after the walkout began. A tentative deal reached late last month to end the strike collapsed last week after the strikers said it didn't go far enough. Gothamist reports the latest settlement would change overtime rules, improve pay, and reduce the need for 24-hour overtime shifts. It will go into effect if 85% of the strikers return to work. They would suffer no formal disciplinary action. Larry Kofsky, NBC News Radio.
Down in D.C., police investigating after Secret Service agents shot a man near the White House.
An agency spokesperson says agents confronted the armed suspect shortly after midnight about a block from the West Wing. The man allegedly pulled out a gun before being shot and was taken to the hospital in unknown condition. The Secret Service had reportedly been notified about a potentially suicidal individual traveling from Indiana to Washington, D.C. President Trump was at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida at the time of the incident. I'm Lisa Carton.
WABC News Time 5:06. President Trump on the news show Fox News Sunday Morning Futures yesterday, talking about tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada. He says they're always subject to change. The president was asked if the business community would get clarity regarding his future tariff plans.
Well, I think so. But, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up.
And he insisted on the show yesterday he's committed to stopping the U.S. from being ripped off. He went on to say that he delayed the tariffs until April 2nd in order to help American automakers and because he thought it would be fair to give Mexico and Canada a break to figure this all out.
For years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking money away from the United States, and all we're doing is getting some of it back. I thought it would be a fair thing to do, and so I gave them a little bit of a break for this short period of time.
Yeah, so now we're looking at that April date, April 2nd, when those tariffs could be placed down. WABC News Time 5:09. The Secretary of Commerce says Elon Musk is his partner, but President Trump is in charge at the White House. Howard Lutnick taking to the news shows over the weekend, responding to questions about Musk's position in the White House.
Elon Musk is your partner. He's your partner in technology. He's your partner in thought. He's your partner in doing it. What President Trump made clear is that Elon is your partner.
This comes after a contentious cabinet meeting last week where the billionaire reportedly got into an argument with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Lutnick says Trump made clear that Musk will work in partnership with cabinet secretaries, that the president will always be the one in charge.
He is in charge. Let's be crystal clear. He did not tell me I'm in charge. And that is what we'd like. You have the greatest businessman and greatest technologist in the world as my partner.
Lutnick insisted that he's excited to work with Musk and glad his department has a talented businessman helping it stay efficient. 5:09 reaction continues to pour in after the White House announced it's pulling $400 million in grants and contracts from Columbia University. 4 federal agencies say the move is the result of the Ivy League school's inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students on that campus.
This is speech. It's protected, and the way that the administration of this college is responding is not viewpoint neutral, and the way that this administration of this country is responding is not viewpoint neutral.
As you might guess, it's controversial on the campus. That's a student there who worries the withholding of federal funds will cause even more division on the campus there.
I think we're going to see generally a strong reaction to this news. The folks on the pro-Palestine side, I would anticipate, are going to be a little bit skeptical of the motives here.
But there's others on the other side who say, thank God the president's pulling the money.
We shouldn't be paying for hate on a college campus. And if Columbia's not getting the message, then action like this, action like cutting the funding, may get through. when you have a boot on anything, a symbol of Judaism, then you're getting to conduct that is discriminatory. Then you're getting to the anti-Semitism that causes harm. When we're seeing people claiming to be affiliated with Hamas, that's a foreign terrorist organization.
Meanwhile, the president giving an anti-Israel campus rabble-rouser a ticket to study abroad for good, a Palestinian activist who led disruptive protests at both Columbia University and Barnard College, arrested by ICE agents at his campus apartment. Mahmoud Khalil, who completed his graduate studies at the Ivy League school in December, potentially faces having his visa revoked and his green card canceled following President Trump's crackdown on unrest at universities across country, especially Columbia. 5:11. Over in Italy, Pope Francis is said to be responding well to treatment for double pneumonia and is showing, they say, gradual slight improvement.
Early Sunday, the Vatican reported the Pope was resting after a quiet night. The 88-year-old pontiff has remained stable with no fever and steady oxygen levels for several days. The Argentine Pope has spent more than 3 weeks in a Rome hospital after being admitted with a severe respiratory infection on February 14th. I'm Mark Mayfield.
We go from Italy to Saudi Arabia. U.S. and Ukrainian officials planning to hold peace talks in Saudi Arabia this week. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, addressing the coming discussions while speaking to reporters.
And I think the idea is to get down a framework for a peace agreement and an initial ceasefire as well.
This comes after Ukrainian President Zelensky is still attempting to repair the relationship with the U.S. following that heated exchange with President Trump in the Oval Office. In the fallout of that meeting, the president halted military assistance to Ukraine and cut off intelligence sharing between the two governments. President Trump also threatening to place those sanctions on Russia. Correspondent Keir Simons has more from Moscow.
Well, it may be an indication that the Trump administration is really understanding that negotiations with Russia could be challenging, that President Trump has now posted on Truth Social that he is considering widespread sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, in that post on Truth Social, he said that he's strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia. He said they would put in place until a ceasefire with Ukraine is reached, trying to get the two sides to the negotiating table. From Ukraine and Russia, we head over to the Middle East, where President Trump's envoy for hostages says the Palestinian militant group Hamas is open to a peace deal with Israel where they disarm and give up their political power. Adam Bowler telling Fox News that his direct negotiations with Hamas are aimed at freeing American hostages, and he says it's showing promise.
We also discussed what the end might look like, and I will tell you that Hamas did orient toward a long-term truce, as they called it.
Yeah, he went on to say he's keeping Israeli officials informed on the progress of the talks as they go on.
And so what I'm trying to do is say, one, how can I get our hostages out as soon as possible? I feel every single day when they're not out. And then how do you create the circumstances to stop this war?
In the event that a truce is reached, he's declined to say what concessions Israel might have to make or whether a ceasefire would lead to the creation of a Palestinian state. An unusual standoff in London over the weekend as a man carrying a Palestinian flag perched on the ledge of Big Ben's Elizabeth Tower for about 10 hours.
Metropolitan Police said they received a report about the unidentified man this morning, shortly before 7:30 a.m. London time, which would have been 2:30 a.m. Eastern. The BBC reports the man posted video of his climb up and said he's protesting against police repression and state violence. Tours of Parliament have been cancelled as emergency crews and police negotiators tried to talk him down. I'm Lisa Carton.
And they were able to do that. And then from the UK, we go to Canada, where they're selecting its next prime minister.
On Sunday, Canada's Liberal Party announced that Mark Carney was elected to succeed Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation back in January. Carney is credited with helping guide the country through the worst of the 2008 financial crisis while acting as governor of the Bank of Canada. He's expected to be sworn in later this week. In his acceptance speech, Carney criticized President Trump's recent tariffs, saying he's attacking Canadian workers, businesses, and families. We cannot let him succeed, and we won't. Carney added that Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. I'm Mark Mayfield.
WABC News Time, 5:15. Let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Happy Monday. Good morning, Justin Ellick.
Happy Monday. Good morning to you, Noam Oladen.
Start here in the NHL at the Garden. The Rangers lost in convincing fashion to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Final score 7-3. Panarin, Schneider, Kreider scored for the Rangers, and Zibanejad had 2 assists. Jonathan Quick finished with 20 saves in New York's third straight loss. Schneider and Kreider scored shorthanded goals 42 seconds apart to tie the score, but it was all Blue Jackets after that. The Rangers remain outside a playoff spot, 1 point behind the Senators for the second wild card. Up next for the Rangers, they'll be in Winnipeg tomorrow night to open up a 3-game road trip. In Anaheim, the Islanders came up short as well, falling 4-1 to the Ducks. Tony D'Angelo spoiled Anaheim tender Lucas Dostal's shutout bid. Just under 5 minutes remaining, and Marcus Hogberg finished with 23 saves for the Islanders. New York, which had won 4 of its previous 5, is now 4 points behind the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. They'll visit the Kings in Los Angeles come tomorrow night. Lastly, in Philadelphia, Cody Glass scored a goal in his first game with the Devils and helped his new team defeat the Flyers 3-1. Up next for Jersey, they'll return home to host the aforementioned Columbus Blue Jackets tomorrow night. In the NBA, no local action last night, but the Knicks and the Nets both back out there tonight in Sacramento. The Knicks get set for a 10:30 p.m. tip-off against the Kings after the Nets get underway in Brooklyn against the visiting LA Lakers at 7:30. And to a busy weekend that was out of the NFL offseason, the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett have agreed on a record contract extension that averages $40 million per year. That includes $123.5 million in guaranteed money, making the star defensive end the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history and ending a standoff that started last month when Garrett requested a trade out of Cleveland. In L.A., 6-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Davante Adams has agreed to a 2-year deal with the Rams, the team announced yesterday. The New York Jets released Adams on March 4th, 3 weeks after announcing they were parting ways with his favorite quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. So there will be no reunion between Rodgers and Adams next season. In Buffalo, the Bills have rewarded NFL MVP Josh Allen with a record-setting 6-year, $330 million contract through the 2030 season. That includes $250 million guaranteed. It's the largest guaranteed total given to an NFL player, surpassing the previous mark of Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, who received $230 million guaranteed. And lastly, the Steelers cannonballed into free agency last night, acquiring wide receiver DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks for a 2025 second-round draft pick and agreeing to a 5-year, $150 million extension.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
oh my God.
That's a big blockbuster move. And the Steelers and Seahawks also are flipping 2025 picks. Is he worth it? Yeah, if you're the Steelers, for sure. You're bringing in, I mean, listen, you bring in him, go with George Pickens. I mean, that's a pretty formidable wide receiver core, if you ask me. And, you got to hope Russell Wilson brings it again this season coming up. Steelers and Seahawks also flipping 2025 picks in the 6th and 7th rounds. That's your Sports Gnome, and I'm Justin L. on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:20. Department of Homeland Security has started giving polygraph tests to its workers with the goal, they say, of finding people who are leaking information.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and President Trump's border czar Tom Homan have recently blamed lower-than-expected immigration arrest numbers on recent leaks to the media about planned ICE operations, revealing which cities were being targeted. Secretary Noem said in a social media post Friday 2 leakers of information had already been discovered within the department and that there's plans to prosecute the pair. I'm Scott Carr in Washington.
Let's go down to South Carolina, where they carried through with this execution by firing squad. Christy Shane is with the Department of Corrections. She read Brad Sigmund's final statement to reporters before his death on Friday evening.
I want my closing statement to be one of love and a calling to my fellow Christians to help us end the death penalty. An eye for an eye was used as justification to the jury for seeking the death penalty. At that time, I was too ignorant to know how wrong that was.
Now, he could have died by lethal injection or the electric chair, but he chose firing squad. It was the first time in the modern era, in South Carolina anyway, that they had brought the firing squad out. Just so you don't feel sorry for Sigmund, he was convicted in 2002 for killing his girlfriend's parents. He chose execution by firing squad because of concerns raised about the previous lethal injections in South Carolina. They've been having problems with that over the years. Correspondent Marissa Pera was in South Carolina.
Death by firing squad is extremely rare in the U.S. This was the first execution of its kind in 15 years. His lawyer said before he died, Sigmund chose fully informed.
Now, this is just like you remember it in the movies. There's one person that has the actual bullet of the three gunmen. The others have blanks. A hood is put over the soon-to-be victim, Anna Dobbins. She's with a local TV affiliate in South Carolina, describing the scene from the witness room.
We could not see the guns. There was also no countdown or anything like that to tell us when the shots would be fired. The shots were fired at 6:05. I perceived that they were all fired at once, that it was just one sound.
Yeah, and then she describes what it was like the moments after the shots were fired.
His arms flexed. There was something in his midsection that moved. I'm not necessarily going to call them breaths. I don't really know, but there was some movement that went on there for 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah. As a reporter, you get offered this chance sometimes to witness executions, and my idea would be, no, I'll take a pass on that. An FAA investigation underway following SpaceX's latest failed rocket launch. More from correspondent Marissa Pera.
The world's largest rocket spinning out of control before breaking into pieces. Fiery debris visible in the sky across Florida and parts of the Caribbean. The explosion even disrupting air travel. The FAA temporarily diverting planes and grounding aircraft for nearly an hour.
The explosion occurred about 8 minutes after Elon Musk's company, launched a Starship test flight from South Texas. Spectators posted videos of the fiery debris falling from the sky around the Bahamas and the Dominican Republic.
It was the 8th test mission for Starship, which SpaceX CEO Elon Musk hopes one day can reach Mars. Musk posting overnight, quote, "Rockets are hard." The scene almost identical to a similar mishap less than 2 months ago when Starship Test Flight 7 also ended in a ball of flames.
Yeah, and here's one of the witnesses.
I looked out my kitchen window and I could see Starship rotating around. It was a bright white flash in the sky.
And there were some people who were flying in that area who say their flights were delayed for hours as investigation is done. A SpaceX internal investigation determined that leaking fuel propellant led to that failure. WABC News Time, 5:24. Shares of Intuitive Machines are taking a dive after its lunar lander ended up on its side on the moon.
The company announced Friday the lander, named Athena, won't be able to recharge its batteries, and the mission has concluded. The company's stock dropped 20% on Thursday, shortly after its CEO announced Athena did not land completely upright. Shares plunged more than 22% Friday to just under $9. The company's first lander also tipped over when it touched down on the moon in February of 2024. I'm Jim Forbes.
From the moon, let's go to California. Gavin Newsom facing some backlash from fellow Democrats after releasing the first episode of his new podcast. We played a little bit of on Friday. It's called This is Gavin Newsom. He argues that Republicans are dominating voter engagement and believes it's time to flip the script.
And then I'm thinking about, we're going to stand back and watch you run circles around us for 6 months, the next 2 or 3 years, waiting for the moment to finally strike, struck me as not necessarily the best advice.
Now, his first guest was Charlie Kirk, the commentator. He talked also about transgender athletes in women's sports, and he did something that Democrats don't like now. They say that he's against it, and he made that clear during the podcast last week.
You guys are posting these cringe videos on social media.
What are the videos? What are the ones?
This is Charlie Kirk and Newsom talking together.
No, this like harmonious thing of like 22 senators all saying the same thing.
You didn't like that, yeah.
I didn't like it. Go ahead. Go do more of that.
What do you do?
Please.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
Yeah, I thought the podcast was a little boring, but there was that moment where he said transgender women shouldn't be playing in women's sports. That's why he's getting so much heat this morning. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Fed is waiting for more clarity on President Trump's new policies before making a new move on interest rates.
Despite elevated levels of uncertainty, the U.S. economy continues to be in a good place. The labor market is solid, and inflation has moved closer to our 2% longer-run goal.
Now, he was speaking at a policy forum here in the city, and he says that the Fed does not need to be in a hurry into making a decision about changing or lowering the rates.
Our current policy stance is well-positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties that we face in pursuing both sides of our mandate.
And he says the Fed needs to really sort of see what the Trump administration is going to do here before they just make their decisions on lowering those interest rates.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam.
On 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5:35. Good morning. It is Monday, March 10th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Sunshine today, just a beautiful day on the way. High 61. Tonight and overnight, clear, low 42, and even warmer for Tuesday. Sunshine, high 64. If you are walking out the door with us right now, so happy you are. 50 and clear in Pomona up in Rockland County. 37 and clear in Butler over in New Jersey. And it's 44 and clear right outside our Midtown studios. We'll start this half hour in Newark, where a police officer was shot and killed on Friday night. The gunman was a 14-year-old kid. Taking place, this was about 6:30 in the evening on Friday night in the area of Broadway and Carteret near a McDonald's in White Castle. The officers who arrived at the scene were investigating the possibility that this group of individuals at these restaurants had illegal firearms. Shots were exchanged upon interaction with police, and two officers and one of the suspects were hit by gunfire. The officer shot and killed Detective Joseph Ascona, a 5-year veteran of the Newark Police Department. He was shot before he even had a chance to get out of his vehicle. 26-year-old was later pronounced dead at the hospital. His entire family showing up at the hospital bedside. His parents, 5 brothers, were there when he was pronounced dead. Here's one of the family members.
He loved to serve. He just loved to serve. Again, that's just part of his personality. And then, being a police officer, it just fit who he was. Yeah, he was a great, great guy. He would always, anytime there was like a family reunion, anything, he would always greet you with a hug.
Just a terrible story. I mean, shouldn't have a choice. He's 26 years old, this police detective. Just god awful. And then what is a 14-year-old doing with an automatic weapon? The family of Ascona asking that same question over the weekend is too, saying they blame the parents of the 14-year-old for somehow letting this kid or not, watching him, that he got his hands on a gun. Officials with the Essex County's prosecutor's office say the teen's now been charged with numerous crimes, including murder, attempted murder, and possession of illegal weapons. At least 4 other people are in custody, being questioned. Not yet clear if they'll face charges. One of the other officers who was shot during this shooting was in critical condition on Friday, but has been upgraded and is expected to survive, thank God. As more details come into us on the funeral of Detective Joseph Ascona, of course, we'll pass them on to you. WABC News Time 540. A minor facing numerous charges after a fatal crash Friday night in Toms River down in Ocean County, New Jersey. The crash occurred intersection of Route 37 and Route 166. It was about 11 p.m. Police say a white BMW being driven by a minor at a high speed crashed into a black Toyota Camry at more than 100 miles an hour. The driver and the front seat passenger of the Toyota Camry were killed. 2 backseat passengers severely injured. They are listed in critical condition. The driver of the BMW, this unlicensed minor, was uninjured and was detained by police. People in the neighborhood say people drive way too fast on this road all the time. Of course, they don't expect to be minors behind the wheel.
This road right here, there's some really thick and fast-moving traffic here.
We're being told before the crash, Tom River police units saw this BMW driving fast, heading west on Route 37. They followed the vehicle from a distance, but did not pursue due to safety reasons. The driver, a minor, now being charged with aggravated manslaughter. 541, let's bring it back here into the city. A prominent Palestinian activist who helped lead Columbia University's student encampment movement arrested over the weekend by federal immigration authorities who claim they were acting on a State Department order to revoke his green card. Last year, Mahmoud Khalil was a student negotiator when pro-Palestinian protesters pitched those tents on the Columbia University campus. Now he's in ICE detention somewhere, we don't know where. A family member and a lawyer say they're trying to get more information on where Khalil is.
It's incredibly distressing to hear that Mahmoud Khalil has been detained by the Department of Homeland Security and has been, in essence, disappeared in this moment.
Now, what we're being told is Mahmoud Khalil was returning to his apartment on Saturday in a university-owned building, and that ICE agents claimed they were going to revoke his student visa, but apparently he does not have one. He graduated in December. He does hold a green card and apparently is married to a U.S. citizen who happens to be 8 months pregnant.
His attorney does not know where he is. They filed a habeas in court last night to find him. And in this moment, what we are demanding is just his immediate release.
President Trump has said he wants to have foreign students deported and detained if they are seen as agitators involved in campus protests. Also, over the weekend on Friday, the administration announced it was cutting $400 million in grants and contracts for Columbia University because of what it says was a failure to fight anti-Semitism on that Ivy League campus. WABC News Time for 5:42. Let's go over to New Jersey, where one of the candidates in the race for governor, Jack Ciattarelli, who of course was the Republican nominee last time around, wants to be the Republican nominee again, is sitting down for a bunch of interviews. One of them yesterday with Marsha Kramer over on CBS, where he threw out this idea about congestion pricing. He said if President Trump isn't able to sink congestion pricing here in New York, he says if he becomes governor, he'll start his own congestion pricing plan for drivers with New York plates coming to New Jersey. He'll start charging them to get into the Garden State.
If President Trump's not successful in getting rid of congestion pricing, I'm sorry, but every New York plate that comes through the tunnels or over the bridges in the morning in New Jersey, we're going to hit them with a congestion pricing fee. I'm serious. We got to go to war.
So let me ask you, that you're going to do the same amount that you would charge?
Absolutely. Why should New Jerseyans pay for the MTA?
And he says a friendly White House would likely let the feds give the approval to a congestion pricing toll in New Jersey. That means you'd be smacked going in, you'd be smacked on the way out.
I'll get New Yorkers to pay for New Jersey Transit.
You just won the election. Transit people who come into New York are going to really love you for that idea, I think.
Yeah, I think it'll be popular, definitely among people who had to pay that $9 toll now, to hear that people coming the other way will get smacked with the toll as well. 5:44, police in the Bronx trying to find a group of men who've been robbing mopeds from individuals at gunpoint. And these robberies go back months now. The robberies been taking place, started all the way back on January 17th. There's been a bunch since then. What happens apparently is they wait for these riders to pull over to the side. Maybe they're making some sort of food delivery. Maybe they're stopping at a traffic light. And these guys run up to them with a gun and take their mopeds away from them. People in some of these neighborhoods where these robberies are happening say they're not completely shocked by it.
I'm not surprised because the simple fact crime is everywhere and it's getting worse. We just need more police activity, more beat walkers. And I haven't been seeing that either. This is what we need.
Eyewitnesses say in one case, 6 men got out of a gray sedan, showed a gun and a knife, forcibly removed a 27-year-old man from his moped before taking off on that moped, and he has not seen it ever since.
I guess the city's not doing their job. They should be doing what they got to do to prevent this from happening, have more security. Mm-hmm. They get paid enough to do what they got to do, so just do it.
And the cops giving us pictures of some of the individuals looking for. You can see them by heading on over to WABCRadio.com. 5:45 now. Let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk and Justin Ella.
Thank you, Noam Layden. Start here in the NHL at the Garden. The Rangers lost in convincing fashion to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Final score 7-3. Panarin, Schneider, and Kreider scored for the Rangers, and Zibanejad had 2 assists. Jonathan Quick finished with 20 saves in New York's third straight loss. Schneider and Kreider scored shorthanded goals 42 seconds apart to tie the score, but it was all Blue Jackets after that. The Rangers remain outside a playoff spot, 1 point behind the Senators for the second wild card. Up next for them, they'll be in Winnipeg tomorrow night to open up a 3-game road trip. In Anaheim, the Islanders came up short as well, falling 4-1 to the Ducks. Tony DeAngelo spoiled Anaheim tender Lucas Dostal's shutout bid with just under 5 minutes remaining, and Marcus Hogberg finished with 23 saves for the Islanders. New York, which had won 4 of its previous 5, is now 4 points behind the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. They'll next visit the Kings in Los Angeles come tomorrow night. Lastly, in Philadelphia, Cody Glass scored a goal in his first game with the Devils and helped his new team defeat the Flyers 3-1. Glass, who was acquired in a trade with Pittsburgh at the deadline on Friday, scored just over 10 minutes into the first, or 11 minutes into the first period, I should say, snapping a wrist shot past Philadelphia goalie Ivan Fedotov. to open the scoring. Jake Allen made 23 saves to earn his 10th win of the season, made several key stops. Eric Hollis scored in the second period. Dawson Mercer added an empty netter for the Devils, who snapped a 3-game losing streak. Up next for them, they'll return home to host the aforementioned Columbus Blue Jackets tomorrow night. No action last night in the NBA, but both teams back out there tonight. And here to concerning news out of the Yankees camp and Major League Baseball over the weekend. Noam Laden, I'm sure you heard, Yanks ace Garrett Cole had imaging on his right elbow and expects to know more about the situation in the next couple of days. The 34-year-old was tagged for 6 runs and 5 hits in 2 2/3 innings during a spring training start against the Minnesota Twins last Thursday. He told reporters he felt good during the outing, but got more and more sore after it was over. Quote, something wasn't right. Cole said on Saturday, told reporters, including one for MLB.com, that the imaging had been distributed and he is waiting for second opinions. And reportedly, that imaging details a recommendation for Tommy John surgery.
Oh, you're kidding.
Which would absolutely be a huge hit for that starting rotation. One that the Yankees thought was going to be really the best, one of the best in baseball, and now with the loss of him and reigning rookie of the year Luis Gil out until at least the end of May, the Yankees here are very banged up, and that's in addition to hits to their starting lineup, like Giancarlo Stanton, who has tendonitis in both of his elbows, and he's nowhere to be seen. So it's all looking up for this.
Is it too late for them to pick up a pitcher before the season starts?
No, of course not.
Okay.
No, I mean they're still, they're still in talks with J.D. Martinez, hopefully bringing him in to kind of act as a DH until Stanton's ready to come back. I mean, Brian Cashman's sitting on his hands, and meanwhile the Yankees don't have a third baseman, they don't have a DH, and their starting rotation here is dwindling away. So
not good.
It's
not good at all.
Really not good with opening day now, just a couple of weeks away. So things got to turn around here quickly for the Yanks. That's your Sports Gnome. I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
I'm Joe Nolan with traffic on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:50. The NYPD looking for a gunman who shot a man to death on a Brooklyn street corner over the weekend.
Police say 45-year-old Stephen Battle was shot in the head on Rockaway Avenue near Somers Street in Bed-Stuy. The Daily News reports he'd just left the Daily Press, a coffee shop and bar, where he'd gone looking for his phone. Surveillance video shows the gunman firing on Battle from across the street. Police say he fled in a black Cadillac. The NYPD has released a photo of the suspect and is asking anyone with information to call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS. Larry Kofsky, NBC News Radio.
Those measles cases continue to spike down south in Texas and Lubbock, Texas. Here in New York, doctors at New York Presbyterian say measles cases in New York and New Jersey are relatively isolated, so that's good news. Dr. Roy Gullick says the best way, of course, to prevent getting the measles is to roll up your sleeve.
The cornerstone of measles management is prevention.
Now, what we're being told is the 2 measles patients here in New York have recovered, not connected, but the 3 measles cases in New Jersey were spread between unvaccinated individuals.
But our best tool against measles, numbers 1, 2, and 3 for prevention, is vaccination. Currently, nationally, about 91% of U.S. children have received vaccinations, but unfortunately, vaccination rates have been declining over time.
Of course, this all comes as more than 200 cases have been reported in Texas, most of them in Lubbock. Of course, anyone born before 1957 is not likely to get sick because of herd immunity from those vaccinations. Back here, New York Republicans trying to find out if Andrew Cuomo violated federal rules regarding his decisions on nursing homes during the COVID pandemic when he was governor. One Hudson Valley Congressman, Mike Lawler, writing a letter to 2 federal agencies to see if Cuomo broke federal policy with his directive to order nursing homes to accept recovering COVID patients early in the pandemic. Of course, that led to lots of deaths.
It wasn't just the decision, it was the aftermath. It was the cover-up, changing of numbers to try and hide 15,000 seniors died as a result of this directive.
Now, the request comes about a week after Cuomo declared he's running for mayor here in the city. A Cuomo spokesperson points to numerous investigations that have already taken place into the matter.
These families deserve answers, and they have asked us to provide them with answers, and that's what we're going to do.
Now, those investigations determined no laws were broken, that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams finally kicking off her mayoral campaign over the weekend from a shopping center in Queens.
Council Speaker Adrienne Adams is term limited for running for re-election to the council, so now she has her sights set on City Hall.
New Yorkers are fed up, so it's time for us to stand up. New Yorkers deserve a government that is accountable to them.
If elected, she would be the first woman mayor in city history. The mayor's race is pretty crowded, especially on the Democratic side of the ticket. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo is vying for the seat, along with state assembly members and 2 former and current city comptrollers. Sitting Mayor Eric Adams, meanwhile, says he is still in the race despite controversy over his federal corruption case. I'm Liz Radabali for 77 WABC News.
Famed director Steven Spielberg has been shooting this UFO movie all over the East Coast. He was out on Long Island for a number of days, causing some headaches in some parking lots that were shut down. Now down at the Jersey Shore, Ocean City and Cape May, where he's getting much more of a welcome because hotels and restaurants that are normally quiet this time of year are packed with people.
You're talking about Tuesdays and Wednesdays in January and February when there's nobody around. It's quite an impact, and it's great.
Yeah, Ocean City Regional Chamber of Commerce director says he's happy about the film shoot. He hopes others will shoot films in the neighborhood.
It really does give that extra boost, and it exposes Ocean City to a different environment for these people that come in and do filming.
We go from the Jersey Shore out to Brooklyn, where the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union announcing the ratification of her first ever union contracts at a Barnes & Noble. Not many of those around. This one in Park Slope. The 3-year agreement includes increased wages, some work safety plans, health care coverage.
To address worker inequality,
Let's try this one.
We wanted our voices heard better in terms of like promotions or just like, working out grievances. We didn't feel like we were respected. To be frank, the base wage kind of sucked. They don't like the idea of slacking off. My knees hurt. That's just plain and simple.
Yeah, maybe more of a surprise in this story is that there's Barnes & Nobles still around, and especially one in Park Slope. A group is making headlines for a unique method of protest.
About 100 trans rights activists disrupted a community education council meeting with the Macarena in a protest against a resolution regarding girls' sports. At District 2, the board passed a resolution last year calling for the City Department of Education to review its policy allowing kids to play on teams according to the gender with which they identify. The vice president of the council tells the New York Post that the resolution is not going to be repealed, noting that the city has already handed the activists a win in confirming that they stand by their policy and refuse to conduct a review. I'm Liz Radabali for 77 WABC News.
And we'll end in Brooklyn. Yesterday was the 28th anniversary of the shooting death of Biggie Smalls. And, of course, they have this huge mural, lots of them, in this neighborhood where he grew up. Of course, he was raised as Christopher Wallace before he became the famous rapper. Lots of people showing up in his memory.
And Biggie's words were so important, and they go through a test of time. It's been, almost 30 years, right? And here we are still, saying those words, listening to his music. Kids that weren't even born yet know his songs, and that's the importance of a word.
And amazingly, all these years later, it was March 9th, 1997, his case still remains unsolved.